Hey guys, it's the hardcore legend Mick Foley here, and I need to call a quick timeout, a brief timeout, because I wanted to tell your listeners what I have been telling Foley is Pod listeners for a while now about all the cool things happening over on adfreeshows.com.
A brand new series has arrived on Ad Free Shows. Top of the Card unpacks everything you need to know in the wrestling trading card space. And we're starting with the granddaddy of them all, the 1982 Wrestling All-Stars Series A set.
Now, this set was not exclusive to any one territory at the time, as we were still right at the tail end of the territory era of professional wrestling. So it was basically a who's who in professional wrestling, with card number 1 being Andre the Giant. Others included in the set include Hulk Hogan, Ric Flair, Dusty Rhodes, Ted DiBiase, and others.
20 years ago, Eric took on Stone Cold in the main event on Raw, but the real main event was the confrontation that happened backstage before the show.
Now, the next week, I'm sitting in this chair, and that same guy, I don't think I had said a word to him that day. I don't think I had seen Rick up until the point he came through that door. And he's, getting me, just telling me to get up, get out of the chair. And he's so pissed off, he's bleeding. I'm on the phone, and he's got blood running down his chin because he bit his lip. He was so mad, he bit the inside of his mouth.
He's got blood on a backstage confrontation.
I hadn't even gotten out of the chair yet.
Ad Free Shows members got to sit shotgun alongside Kevin Nash and Click This co-host Sean Oliver as they watch back some of the worst matches in history. None more so than the Yeti.
Randy, now the mummy is not Frankenstein. You don't walk with your arms straight out
with
like
the arms out, right? And a Yeti is also not a mummy, but I don't know. Was it Jim Hurd who was here? Well, whose brainchild was this?
Who gives a fuck?
That's just a small taste, a sampling, if you will, of what we have waiting for you, with 4 levels to choose from. 4. See for yourself why Ad Free Shows is the best value in wrestling today. Sign up now, right now, at adfreeshows.com. Yeah.
The recognized symbol of excellence in sports entertainment.
Hey, it's Conrad Thompson, and you're listening to My World. And of course, we couldn't do it without the Homer himself, the greatest professional wrestler of all time. Ladies and gentlemen, Double J, Jeff Jarrett. Jeff, how are you, man?
Oh, Connie, how we doing, my man? My voice, I'm going to get it right out. Apologies. It's a little hoarse, a little scratchy. I've been doing a lot of talking and maybe a little screaming here and there over the last 5 to 7 days. Screaming at that TV on them damn upsets in My World Madness. And I'll call it my day job up there in the cold confines of Winnipeg and up in Troy. And my man Code Dog, we talk strategy all the way up to Troy and all the way back. So I'll let you lead us out however you want to go. But spring is in the air. Had a little cold up here at the house. I know it's cold down in I guarantee it's cold up on the hill to Conradison, right?
30 degrees here this morning.
Yeah.
And that's not normal for this time of year,
No, it's not. The nice trees are budding. Spring is in the air. Were your kids just is Huntsville on spring break this past week?
My kids are in college now. So, but yeah, Morgan, she, University of Alabama was spring break last week. So they were down in Gulf Shores and hanging out with their friends. And I got to meet the new boyfriend and send him home with his tail between his legs. So that was fun.
Oh, how about that?
Yeah.
Did
time
you greet him?
Papa Lav had to come out. Oh, he knows all about North Alabama now.
Yeah. Where's he from?
California.
Where's he? Oh.
Yeah.
Conrad, did you give him that little speech I've heard around the southern parts and go up to the new boyfriend and say, hey, boy, don't touch my daughter anywhere you don't want me to touch you? And that just kind of
sets the tone, doesn't it? I think I'll be using that one. I'll tell you what, though, seriously, we got a lot to talk about. We're going to be talking about a fun time in TNA. I can't believe this is real. but it was 20 years ago. But before we talk about 20 years ago, I want to talk about this past weekend. Of course, the NCAA tournament got kicked off in a big way. Alabama is doing what they do, rolling right along. I was so impressed to see how well the SEC has turned up. Arkansas is going to be playing UConn on this Thursday. We've also got your hometown, Tennessee. They're going to be taking on Florida Atlantic on Thursday. We've got, I guess you can count Texas, kinda. They're in it with Xavier. That's going to happen on Friday. And also on Friday, Alabama stomp a mud hole and walk it dry in old San Diego State. What did you think, man? Lots of upsets, lots of things people didn't call. I enjoyed it, but it's a little weird. No Duke, no Kentucky, nor North Carolina. What the hell's going on?
The Blues are out. I saw a tweet or something to that effect. But you know what? I love watching Charles Barkley and Kenny Smith. You know, they're obviously from our era. Shaq, just on the pro NBA shows. But when they do the March Madness, to me, they kind of take their game, I don't say to a different level, but there's so much insight into it. And Conrad, with all the upsets, look, I'm a basketball junkie, so I maybe read way too much into it or listen too much. I love the analysis and all this kind of stuff, but they're talking about all the upsets. I mean, just one after another after another. And a lot of these guys are 5th and 6th year seniors because of the pandemic year. There's a lot of factors that are going into it. But one of the analysis I heard was that all these kids, they are kids, have all these individual trainers, and they literally just teach them how to shoot and score. But as far as playing team ball and team defense, and I'm sure Coach Rosie is going to be nodding his head and all this, it's that these teams that during the season don't have that superstar athlete or superstar scorer, they have to play together as a team. And now it comes tournament time, team defense, team offense. There's 5 on the court. It's just a recipe for complete March Madness and all these upsets. So I love it. I absolutely love the tournament. I'm not big in wrestling tournaments, but I am big in NCAA March Madness tournaments because there's going to be a shocker that wins it all. I'm not sure, but a lot of fun. Love to go over and run, and I just the king of the mountain. I love to see my name at the very top of the leaderboard. Makes fellows like you and others just like, damn, Double J is so smart. He's right at the top. Anywho, a lot of fun. I love watching. Hey, and I'll say this. I'll put you on the spot there, Roll Tide man. How far is Bama going to go? Will they make it to the Final Four finals?
No, they won't.
Why not?
There's just a lot of off the court stuff going on this year, and I just feel like eventually those distractions have got to catch up. Like, listen, I think we're playing. Just the idea that we're in the Sweet 16 is something that, I mean, I'm proud of as an Alabama fan. We're not a historic basketball team, so the idea that we're there is freaking cool. However, I just got to be a little more realistic. I would love to see. Oh man, they're going to go the whole. I don't know about that.
Conrad, I'm gonna flip the script on you. You like the coach?
Yeah,
I do too. I think he's believing in themselves, and I think I think the message that he's given them is you can't control anything that goes off the court. And those guys, those college kids, are nodding their head, going, "Well, you're damn right. There's a lot." But you can control what goes on the court. So focus on the court. I think they're going to make a run. They may win it all. I really believe that.
From your ears,
it'd be exciting. It would. Oh, Nate.
It would be super exciting. Hey, let's if Marcus can, let's throw up the leaderboard for the brackets, because we started myworldmadness.com last week, and we know that we had a bunch of buy-in and there's a bunch of folks playing, but boy, a lot of brackets busted after all these upsets. But still, there you are, king of the mountain, which, by the way, I know that, here's a peek behind the curtain we don't often talk about, but as a function of television production, WWE and AEW have TV trucks. So this is where they would keep all the lights and the rings and everything else, the staging and the rigging and all that stuff. Well, the other thing they keep is they've got like a giant rolling case with drawers in it. And that's where they keep Jeff Jarrett's brand new AEW International World Wrestling Championship. Because as we all saw, he definitely won that title this past Wednesday. But he doesn't get to carry it with him around because it's kind of a hassle. If you've ever been a champion, as Jeff has, basically since the day he put his boots on in 86, every time he goes through TSA, they make him pull the belt out and show it off and make sure it's not a weapon. And then they all want to take pictures and do meet and greets. And it's just a hassle. So because Jeff had to fly commercial with the commoners this past week, he said, just keep the belt on the TV truck. But I look forward to seeing you this Wednesday, tomorrow night, with that international championship around your waist where it rightfully belongs.
Yeah. Okay. I appreciate that, Conrad. I had no idea where you're going with that, but I know that you had to have enjoyed that match from Winnipeg. And there was a certain, in the biz, they call it a high spot that you may or may not enjoy.
Jeff, I'm going to tell you.
We're not talking about the DDT spot.
No.
We're not talking about the guitar spot.
No.
We're not even talking about the strut spot, if you will.
No. Here's the thing, Jeff. My appreciation for you has grown leaps and bounds since I met you in Back Booth in Orlando before the very first ever live Something to Wrestle. Before I met you,
boys, it's getting deep. Just get ready. I can. If he's going to Orlando, that night was okay. Here we go.
Before I met you, and my hand touched your hand backstage, I thought you were the human fast forward button.
Yes, you stated that.
Now that I have gotten to know you and I have started to take a look at your body of work, I have a whole new appreciation for it. And before you showed up here today, I had a chance to catch up with some of our ad-free family members who were watching along with us. And I was explaining that as I got older, my opinions about wrestling have changed. As a kid, I was not a Bobby Eaton fan. I liked that he was from Huntsville, Alabama, but that guy didn't do crazy promos or have super fun music or run to the ring and shake the ropes or look like an action figure like the Ultimate Warrior. So he wasn't for me. And Arn Anderson looked like, he was in the Four Horsemen, which I guess was a cool bad guy group, but he also looked like a guy who could just be friends with my dad. He didn't look like Demolition or Road Warrior Hawk. So in my mind, not for me. Now, with the benefit of hindsight, I get to look back at the stuff I used to like and say, wow, I don't know about how great those Ultimate Warrior matches were, but have you seen what Bobby Eaton can do? And how about all the little stuff that Arn Anderson does? And I've grown to appreciate Double J the same way. But I want to give you a compliment because just in the last handful of months, we have seen the darker, crazy man, more violent side of Jeff Jarrett that damn near murders grandpas in parking lots.
I like the version.
And then we've seen a little more lighthearted, a little more fun, like your belt celebration when you won the tag titles before that BITCH Aubrey Edwards stole them from you. And then this past week when you put on an absolute clinic and you showed a cosplay wrestler named Orange Cassidy what real wrestling was all about. I mean, you showed him how to do his stuff better than he does. And it made my heart grow 3 sizes. And at my weight, that's dangerous. But in that particular moment, you not only took up one spot on my Mount Rushmore of wrestling, you now embody all 4.
Oh, it's deep.
And now you think that I'm making this up, but we got some pretty talented people who work with us here on adfreeshows.com. Would you agree with that?
Oh, it's no kidding. It is the cream of the crop, the best of the best of the best. Matter of fact, they make you look great.
There you go.
No, I'm kidding.
Near the top of that list is a fellow who resides across the border in Canada. His name is Chris McDonald. And I asked Chris McDonald for a favor. And Chris McDonald came through in a big way. And our pal Marcus has it prepared and ready.
Oh, no.
And Jeff, I want you to just mute your microphone and I'm going to mute mine. And we're just going to watch this and enjoy what Chris has put together for us. What I believe should be on the highlight reel for 2020 forever and ever. Amen. I don't give a damn what happens at SummerSlam or WrestleMania or All Out or Double or Nothing. It won't get any better than it was last Wednesday. Let's take a look.
Definitely fumbled right there. And the scoop and the slam, that's all that damage that Orange Cassidy suffered 1 week ago. Well, you know, when you come down on that leapfrog, all your weight is on that joint of your knee, of both your knees. So, yeah, definitely, as we assume, there's something going on with that knee. Now, Box City right here. Yep, so we're getting everybody's confused. They're supposed to do that for Orange Cassidy. Oh, Cassidy, ripping that shit.
That's good. Oh, Chris, you're the best.
So
It's a tearjerker. What an emotional connection you made, Conrad.
Jeff,
Folks,
I
if you've
just
never watched our YouTube. This is a clip to watch on YouTube. Not with the nonsense that I just did. Conrad, he's crying.
it's
Right.
beautiful.
I made you cry today.
You made me cry last Wednesday. I've had that on repeat. I have it sitting on my DVR, delete when you need the space, delete when there's a certain number of episodes. And that one is marked delete when I say so. I will never ever delete that. Like here's the thing. I mean this sincerely too. I want them to play that at my funeral. Like that right there, like that shows you what the human condition is capable of. Like this is like that's 11 out of 10. That's 7 stars, not in the Tokyo Dome, but in Winnipeg. I know Vikingo and Omega are going to wrestle on Wednesday night. Ain't going to be as good as what you just saw. I mean, let's be real. And I know it's the dream match and blah blah blah, but Jeff Jarrett is the gift we didn't deserve. And I applaud you, sir.
Oh my gosh.
You're my favorite wrestler of all time now. And not only are you a member of the Horsemen, you know what? If you were old enough, you'd have created the shit. That would have been your thing and they would have called it 5 Horsemen because everything you do is just a little bit better than what everybody else does.
Oh, Conrad, stop it.
Dude, that was so good. Like I was watching at my house and I stood up and cheered.
Stop it.
It's just me and Megan and the 2 dogs. I'm in my recliner, the one. And
Yes.
I pop up and I start clapping.
Megan threw the remote control at you.
Megan's like, what are you doing? And I'm like, do you not see this? And she thought it was funny. She's like, yeah, it's funny. I was like, no, it's beautiful. This is what humans are capable of. Like, we should put that in a time capsule when we first walked on the moon and then that in that order.
Hey, as you said that, Karen actually, as a spouse would, she doesn't find much of my stuff very humorous. She said, that actually put a big smile on my face. She said, I actually chuckled. I said, well, that's good to hear.
I don't know what was funnier either. The kicks or the tucking of the hands. The tucking of the hands is what sets the tone. And I'll be honest, I don't know who was like picking the camera shots.
They nailed
But
it.
when they went to Sanjay, I wanted to nut tap them. Like, you don't interrupt greatness. All right. We can go back to Sanjay for a reaction shot afterwards. But when we're painting the Michelangelo here, let it run, son. Let it run. My goodness.
Oh, Conrad, enough. I'm going to take a hard left here, but because I do want to get your feedback on this, because Saturday night in Troy, Ohio, we'll let you comment on that.
The first ever AEW house show on the road outside of Jacksonville.
Yes. Yeah. It was, almost a sellout, just a few tickets away. But anyway, super successful. But anyway, before the show got started, I was talking to some guys backstage that were, I say they were part of security. They were part of the building maintenance or whatever, but they had watched on Wednesday and were talking about how there was about, 4, 5, 6 of them, Conrad. I do. I want to hear your thoughts on this. They were talking about it, how they enjoyed it and this and that. And they commented on the little jig, little dance, whatever you want to call it, and this and that. And they were complimentary of the match. And then one of them said, hey man, let's talk about that Ric Flair last match. And so we kind of got into that, and we kind of had an organic conversation. And there were some guys pros, and then there were guys, they weren't against it. They were just like, and I said, did you watch it? Okay, so here's where I did my survey. Out of 5 or 6, One watched it on Fight and loved it. Another one watched it on Fight and said that he was obviously a big Ric Flair fan. It was so emotional. It brought him to tears multiple times, him walking to the ring. And then he got worried about Rick during the match. And then the finish. And then when Rick basically kind of said goodnight, he was super emotional. A couple of the guys saw it on Twitter and this and that. And then another guy who is the loudest critic of it, I said, did you see any of it? I said, hey, man, it's just a nothing. Absolutely not even a tweet. So I say all this to say, compare the Ric Flair last match and the Orange Cassidy match. Here's two things that my takeaway, and I drove home yesterday, Monday, so I drove home Sunday, had 5 hours of time, lots of thinking, but I kind of drilled down to Ric Flair's last match. The expectations going into that match were so wide and diverse. You have a 35-year plus career of mine, and Rick is a 45, and then Jay and Andrade, no disrespect, but different ones. But the expectations going into that, some people maybe delusionally think we're going to see Flair do the upside down flip or all of his trademark stuff, or we're going to see this Jeff or whatever it was, the expectations. Flip the coin, and me and Orange, I think from, hey, this is going to be amusing.
Yep.
How, he's in decent shape. This may be okay. And, Orange, this and that, all this kind of stuff, but there was zero expectations. And look, if you were in the house in Winnipeg, there's no doubt that, I call my stinkers, and I'll call average, but the people who came to Winnipeg Live, they certainly enjoyed it. I'll say that as humbly as I can. It was fantastic reaction. The Ric Flair last match, if you were if you were in the building, there were multiple times, folks, and obviously I live here in Nashville, that have come up to me and said, I got chill bumps, I got this, I got that, I got this. They love it, love it, love it. And the people that don't see it or maybe saw the fight, then they're kind of mashing it and saying, oh, Rick almost died. And I'm thinking, now it's gotten to the point the legend goes, no, he wasn't. I was outside with Rick beating him up, and he's calling everything. And I'm like, oh, Rick, don't do this heart attack spot. And he had to do it. So he's working. Was he dehydrated? Yes. So in spite of being plus 70 and dehydrated and drank all the night before and blah, 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 blah. In a lot of ways, and I'm going to probably get criticism for that SOB still tore the house down. So it's just funny. I'm going back to expectations. So Conrad, I'll shut up and listen as our friend Cassio says on talk radio. What's your, just because the expectations, people didn't expect me and Orange to do, or I don't know what they expected, but Ric Flair's last match, I think there were so many expectations, and all of a sudden they just want to criticize it, especially the ones that either didn't see it or weren't there.
Well, even crazier to me is there's a guy that I consider to be a friend of mine, and certainly as a friend of yours, who's come out and said, oh, well, Rick was drunk before the match. And it's like, what? No, he wasn't. Rick's problem was he didn't drink anything at all before the match. But you and I were with him from about noon on. He was at StarCast before, but we were at the building noon on together, by and large in the same room most of the time. Rick didn't drink a drop of anything, and that was the trouble. He should have had some water and some Gatorades and some electrolytes and all that jazz. But the narrative that, well, Rick climbed into the ring drunk is a little silly. Like, that's just not even close to reality.
Here's the deal. Rick is always working. I say that out of diplomacy, but he's when he walked through the curtain and he's at ringside and I'm going to pass out and this and that, he didn't feel good, maybe dehydrated, but there was never one moment for me. This is me, because I talked to Rick constantly during the match. There was never one moment that I was seriously worried about his health. I'll shut up.
Well, let's talk about why we're here, and that's to tell you guys how you can not worry about your health. You know what we're talking about. Athletic Greens. A little AG1 will get you going every single day. Maybe that's what Rick needed before his last match. Just one scoop and a cup of water every day. That's it. That's all you need. You're going to get 75 high-quality vitamins, minerals, whole food source superfoods, probiotics, and adaptogens, everything you need to start your day right. It's keto-friendly, it's lifestyle-friendly, it's paleo-friendly, it's vegan-friendly, it's dairy-free, it's gluten-free. There's less than 1 gram of sugar. There's no GMOs. There's no nasty chemicals. In fact, there's no artificial anything. But somehow, man, it still tastes good. And it's for you if you're looking for better sleep quality and recovery, better mental clarity and alertness. Think of it as like your all-in-one nutritional insurance, and don't just take it from us. They've got over 7,000 5-star reviews. They've been recommended by professional athletes, and a lot of leading health experts are trusting AG1 as well. Check it out. It's time to reclaim your health, arm your immune system with convenient daily nutrition. Seriously, y'all, 1 scoop in a cup of water every day, that's it. No need for a million different pills and supplements to look out for your health, and to make it easy, Athletic Greens is going to give you a free 1-year supply of immune-supporting vitamin D and 5 free travel packs with your first purchase. All you got to do is visit athleticgreens.com/myworld. Again, that's athleticgreens.com/myworld to take ownership over your health and pick up the ultimate daily nutritional insurance. So Jeff, let's jump right into it. We got a lot to cover today. We're talking about 20 years ago in TNA, and in our most recent episode about that subject, we talked about how Raven had just come into the asylum, and the Torch would report that Vince Russo has resumed his former role of producing backstage segments, and that he was popular in a lot of the locker room circles, with almost everyone saying how easy he was to work with. And Wade would say when he's not producing segments, he spends most of his time in the SEX locker room hanging out with Road Dogg and Disco and Raven now that they're all there. And the locker room is being praised, according to Wade. It's saying that it's a positive place to work. And even independent wrestlers who have worked WWE say they prefer the more relaxed atmosphere of TNA. And they feel like it's much more approachable, and they're more, feels like they're more at home. And there's a lot of praise for you and your dad and others in management for not sort of beating people over the head with the fact that I'm in charge. I really like the idea that there's all this positive feedback, but there is one person who maybe isn't getting all this love heaped on him. Old Mortimer Plumtree. Quote, Morty comes off like he's trying to show us he's important, one wrestler said. So do you remember that being a goal of yours? We want the locker room to be a laid back and relaxed atmosphere. And was that kind of what it was like when you were growing up in Memphis?
Well, I think the easiest way to kind of say this is that because as of late, being in the AEW locker room, it's demands on everybody's time. When you're running a Wednesday night show and the demands that are Wednesdays only, it's like we didn't have promos to do for market coming up. We didn't have green screens. We didn't have photos. We didn't have all the different pulling everybody in 10 different directions. We had a 2-hour show to produce, pre-tapes, and guys get ready for the matches. So there were less demands, but you always want to have a, and I don't like facts. I think a highly competitive locker room in a constructive way is the best one. It's show day. And I've often said, you know, finishing production meetings or whatever it may be, as we kind of get out and start the day, I want everybody involved, whether you're in front of the camera or behind the camera, to get ready for game time. It is game day, so go get your work done. With that being said, it's never productive for folks to walk on eggshells and worry about this and worry about that. But I think we're going to dovetail into, again, Dave, whoever reported that, sometimes has to report something that's newsworthy, something that is, I don't call it clickbait in these days, but something. And look, I would assume that Morty, great guy, still stay in contact with him this day, but he was quote unquote an office guy. And sometimes he had to deliver bad news, whatever it may be. I mean, it could be as small as catering tickets, and a guy walk in and have 4 of his friends and say, I want 5 catering tickets. No, we're contracted to buy 140 meals. If we add on 4 friends to everybody's meal, we're going to run out of food. I don't know what it was, but Morty obviously delivered some bad news to some folks, and they went and chirped to the
to Wade.
to Wade. Okay, to Wade, and he wrote it, and good for it. It makes for a good newsletter reading.
Talk to me about Russo. You know, it's written here that, I mean, we know he's helping write the shows, or maybe even the head writer, but it also mentions here that he's working to produce some backstage vignettes. You got to work with a lot of great backstage producers. I know you've been very complimentary of Bruce over the years.
Yep.
Was that something he had a passion for, or was Russo really good at it? I mean, we know that you were high on his writing, and I'm not saying that to be funny.
Yeah.
He wrote some great stuff, but that's a different skill set than producing, is it not?
It is. It is. And I think Vince, yes, strong suits, character development, and kind of thinking outside the box would probably Russo's strongest suit, but also maybe his weakest link. That, in my opinion, sometimes when you get too far out of the box, you lose, you confuse them and you lose. But producing vignettes, pre-tapes, Vince had a gift for that. Just like you said, Bruce. Bruce, what I always liked when Bruce would really get down into the DNA of it is that he really would try to bring out what's in each talent, and Vince did too. But don't do it my way. Do it your way. But here's an example. But yeah, Vince liked producing pre-tapes.
Let's talk a little bit about Raven. Of course, we know he's going to be coming in, and we're going to throw him right into the mix for the world title. Larry Zbyszko had been doing some stuff on camera with AJ Styles, and there's like 3 angles in one show here with Raven. You're going to destroy Raven until Russo saves him, and that whole scene ends with Raven superplexing you through a table. That's a big one. The second angle, though, maybe a little more controversial. Raven is going to confront AJ looking for a title shot, and AJ is going to make reference to Raven having a syringe and implying he's a heroin addict. That leads to a big pull apart. You're going to show back up and clean house, and you're going to leave AJ laying after the stroke and snatch the belt. But the syringe line, the implied heroin reference, talk to me about that.
I wish I could, when I read the notes, I wish I could recall all that, but it's one of those things that my gut tells me Russo and Raven talked about it and said, yeah, let's do it. And AJ, being the great soldier, said, okay. You know, it's one of those things that Raven's character to me was defined walking in the door. And so maybe they thought it was good for character development. I wish I had better recall on this specific night, but I don't.
So we get another big pull apart. It's a tease for a Jarrett Raven title match, but it never happens because this brawl breaks out. AJ is going to be involved. He's even going to give you a stroke on the belt and take the belt with him. And that's how the show ends. So we're getting a lot of mileage out of Raven. I mean, the old school approach would say, hey, maybe we need to take our time with this, but 3 big segments in one big show. Is this because you didn't know how long you had Raven? I mean, at this point, I'm not saying this to be ugly, but it's not like there's a WCW or an ECW to jump to. And if he's fresh off the WWE run, it's not like he's likely to just turn around and go back there. Was this something where you just had a guarantee for a certain number of dates? Or are you trying to see, hey, can we heat this up and get some traction? Or what's the thinking for? I'm not going to say you went so far as to quote unquote hot shot, but it does feel like, man, we're just jumping right into the mix with Raven, and there's a lot of him in the same show.
Well, you go back and look at either a Memphis or even an Attitude Era with Stone Cold or whatever. I don't want to put it on one talent. Raven came in and the vibe felt right, and you've got a hot talent, hammer down if they can carry the segments, because you know it's the analogy. Are you going to try to sell 5 matches halfway, or 4 matches a little bit better, or 3? But let's go for 1. Let's get 1 match as hot as we can, or at least head down that route. And Raven could do it, and that's the decision we made, at least for this episode. But yeah, when Raven came in, the momentum on him was not easy to get. I mean, it was easy to get started, and we just kept going with it.
Talk to me a little bit about Tony Schiavone. He's going to come in for a one-off here. Yeah, that's right. Tony Schiavone, if you're watching with us over on YouTube, was actually on TNA for a whole one episode, but he had been the voice of the NWA and WCW forever, going back to the Jim Crockett Promotions days, and even all the way through the last Nitro. And we haven't seen him for a while. Of course, we know he jumped into radio and started doing his life outside of wrestling, but I think he was friendly with Russo and just a ride over from Atlanta. He shows up, does one show, and never again. What did you think of his performance? What was your impression of him way back when?
The first thing that came to my mind, and it popped up in the picture, I've never seen Tony Schiavone with facial hair, ever.
Right.
He looks so different, like really, really different. But heck, you may have more insight on this than I do. But it was, I think he was always designed for a one and done. He still is. But this time, the voice of WCW from late 80s till it closed the doors. So when you have Mike and Don already in that seat, where are you going to put a guy with the stature of Tony Schiavone? And you certainly aren't going to make him a mouthpiece or a manager of any of that. But correct me if I'm wrong. Wasn't it solely a Russo relationship that Vince tried to get him to do?
Yes, and as from what I've understood, based on the way Tony tells it, is he rode to this one show just to sort of see what it was like, because Russo had sort of been pestering about it, and he decided, I don't like it. It's not for me. I'm out.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the Rock and Roll Express. They're going to show up here on this show and come in to save America's Most Wanted before there's a swerve and they turn heel. That's right. The Rock and Roll Express is heels. 20 years prior to this, they were the biggest baby faces in all the land. And now here, we're trying them as heels. What's the thinking there?
God, and again, all these like Wednesday after Wednesday after Wednesday, but I'm pretty sure Ricky sold us on this. They wanted work. They monster name. We had America's Most Wanted. It's a very easy, natural rivalry. Veterans versus the up and comers. And Ricky, in his heart of hearts, Ricky loves to be a heel. But obviously he's a fantastic baby face, but that's his kind of his, and now watching his son, you can kind of see the threads of, Ricky wanted to be a heel and we wanted to give it a shot. Again, during this 2002, 2003, during all the Asylum years, we didn't have the finances. We didn't want the commitment of talent because we're literally saying, hey, come work for us. We've got one day a week. There was no house shows in the plans at this time. So we didn't have guys, I've said it 1,000 times, especially in these early days. What we have is an opportunity for you, and we're going to present it to you. And if you agree and we agree, go do this Wednesday night. And if it comes off great, we won't have to ask you if you want to come back. You're going to tell us.
Well, I love what you're talking about. You didn't have the budget, because you get a rare compliment from Dave Meltzer.
Get out of here.
Yeah. From people within the company are marveling at the job Jeff Jarrett does backstage. He basically runs the wrestling end, which means plays agent, helps the younger guys lay out their matches, takes care of everyone's problems, and is constantly on the go from about 10 a.m. until the last person leaves because the company is so understaffed. How about that? That feels like a compliment right there.
I bet Meltzer must have been on grandma's cough syrup this week or something, not feeling well, for him to give me just a little bit of pat on the back. But those Wednesdays, wouldn't want to go back. But man, the Wednesdays.
Yes, you would. For one Wednesday, you'd want to do it one more time.
Oh man. It was, I can't say it was exhausting, but it was
mentally, I'm sure it was.
Yeah. Leave the house at 8 a.m., 8:30, and know that I wasn't getting back home till midnight and kind of not slowing down. In those days, after the show, I'd go have a adult beverage or two after the show with Mike and Don to just kind of post-mortem everything. But man, it was what a 12-hour day. Just a hell of a 12-hour day. And we were and me in so many ways. That kind of made of it as well.
One of the other things I want to mention on the show here is we got BG James, the former Road Dogg, coming out and doing a promo where he's basically portraying Vince McMahon as a vindictive guy who gives him the awful Double J gimmick because he was mad at Jeff Jarrett, not him. And he says that it was actually Russo's D-Generation X that made him the most entertaining personality in pro wrestling that led to him selling out Madison Square Garden 20 straight weeks. This sort of talk of, and now I'm down here and everything sucks, but back then I was on top, but Vince McMahon sucks too. Like, I understand the idea of trying to lean into what Eric Bischoff used to talk about, controversy creates cash. However, this is a pay-per-view where people are paying $10 to come out of their pocket and buy the show. And when we have guys who are sort of saying, hey, this sucks, but remember that good stuff back in the day? Well, that was free, but you got to pay $10 for this stuff that I'm just basically saying sucks. Was there ever like a moratorium put on, okay, damn it, we're not doing that stuff anymore? And if not, why not? I can't imagine your dad thought this was necessarily quote unquote good for business or helped anybody get over.
Me and my father, me and Dutch. I mean, we could go down a whole kind of a laundry list. Conrad, well said, well put, because what we really did was, to take it back to our territory days, we did a 90-minute Memphis TV studio show in a Monday night Mid-South Coliseum show mashup. That was kind of our reality, that you free TV on, free TV versus paid live event. And you always kind of had an internal struggle on just what you're saying. Hey, this is kind of a character development promo to set up something down the line. But right now, this folks sitting at home watching this is, they paid to watch this. So again, Conrad, the juggling act, and I don't know if it has it in the notes, but we tried, we're going to have some type of promo like that is character development, storytelling. Let's end it with action to have a fight right there. Maybe not what he was talking about, whether it's somebody sticking up for whoever it may be, but it's the juggling act of, let's get some character development in, but hey, let's give them a fight right now.
Well, let's talk about the torch the next week as we're marching through 03 here. The widespread speculation is that Jeff Jarrett now has the final say on all booking matters and accepts input from his father and Vince Russo. It's assumed by most in TNA that Russo is actually formatting the scripts. Russo does not attend production meetings, perhaps in part because Jerry Jarrett does. More than one TNA source felt Russo's recent promo line about Jerry living vicariously through Jeff was a shoot. Unless Jerry and Russo are working everyone around them, there's still heat between the two of them. Is that right, that Russo wouldn't come to the production meetings because your dad was in them?
It wasn't because of that. That picture I brought back a memory. I think that was in the original TNA offices up on that's the original offices in it was up on Gallatin Road. Anyway, the original TNA office. Anyhow, no, it wasn't because because my father was there, and I think you noted that. How'd you say, Conrad? Now I make all final decisions.
Yep.
Here's and look, Wade and Dave made their money off of is to kind of create who's the buck stop. But from the beginning, before show one, I was the majority, and so the decisions rested on my shoulders. And when the Carters came in, the deal that was put in place was they do everything but the creative, and down to the talent budgets, they do everything. But as far as creating and producing the show, the buck stopped with me always. So that was never really. But there were, and we've gone over this multiple times on this podcast. On this is a Jerry Jarrett influence, or this is a Dutch Mantel, or this is Vince Russo. But ultimately, the decision kind of rests on my shoulders. But during this time, and I'm not exactly sure, but there was a period of time, Vince lived in Atlanta, and on Mondays, I would drive from my house to just south of Murfreesboro, which is about a little over an hour, and he'd drive up, Conrad, from Atlanta, which is 2.5, and we would meet at a Cracker Barrel and go in the back and eat, or I would eat, but he wouldn't eat, have coffee or whatever. And we would just kind of throw ideas around, not just the following Wednesday show 2 days from now or when we met, but a couple of weeks and months. And we kind of had that rhythm of talking about things. And then on my drive back, I'd call Bob Ryder because I would put him on speaker and I had my handwritten notes and kind of things. And I'm like, hey, let's generally format this, what's coming up this Wednesday. And of course, if Dutch was there, or obviously my dad during the time, whoever else influenced it, but ultimately it rested on my shoulders.
Well, I also want to ask about this line about more than one TNA source felt Russo's recent promo line about Jerry living vicariously through Jeff was a shoot. Did you ever feel that? Did anybody ever say that to you?
Jerry living vicariously through me?
Yes.
No. I mean, I not saying it wasn't said, but I don't believe that for a second. But I say this, look, we all kind of been well documented here. Why do I not believe that? Because at the end of the day, two alpha males ended up not getting along and getting estranged because he wanted to do it his way.
Yes.
That's the reality. I wanted to do it my way. He wanted to do it his way. Ultimately, we butted heads and parted ways, unfortunately, but fortunately, we reconciled. But the reality was, no, he did not live vicariously through me because he wanted to do it through.
By the way, the only way last Wednesday's match with Orange Cassidy could have been better would have been if you were kicking him with your dad's special shoes. That would have made it even better. Let's talk about Andrew McManus here. It's in the torch here that he's been talking with you about the idea of promoting some TNA overseas tours. And Wade would even say, once upon a time, there was a feeling that perhaps Andrew was trying to sabotage TNA pay-per-views in Australia. But now it looks like there's an about face here. What was the nature of your relationship with Andrew? Was it good? Was it contentious?
No, it was good. Good. At his very core was a music. Well, he's a promoter,
concert promoter.
Yeah, as just an event promoter. Doesn't have to be just music, whatever it may be. 90% of his shows were music, but he was a promoter, and he saw an opportunity. I kind of want to say when WCW shut down, and WWF was the only game in town. It wasn't just in the television market, but in so many different markets, the action figure market, the video game market, the touring market. There became a void in the marketplace. What's going to fill that void? The pay-per-view industry alone, that was the numbers that I dialed into, how much revenue was created that the cable companies, above everybody else, really looked at it like, we're going to lose all this revenue? It's a boatload. But no, me and McManus, we didn't always see eye to eye, but he wanted to promote wrestling and saw big profit in it, because once he kind of understood it, that it wasn't like a top pop or country or even a legacy act. Those guys, it's such much better margins when you have a music act. Wrestling, he saw a lot of upside, like an enormous amount of upside that he could participate in. So he always looked at it from a business perspective first and foremost.
Let's keep it going here. Let's talk about Sting. Wade would report that there's a better chance than ever that Sting is going to be on a TNA show sometime this year. You, of course, had met Sting in Memphis and then spent a lot of time with him in WCW. Even did some of those WWA shows with McManus with him. But what were your conversations like with Sting? What was his hesitancy? Was it all just getting the money together, or was there more to it than that, at least from his end?
Both. Sting ain't going to leave his house for free, period. But it is not always just about the money for Sting. He wants to feel comfortable. He wants to understand it. He also wants to see an upside. That's always been my relationship. And he's always been so damn just super honest about, no, Jeff, I'm not even going to give you a maybe on the phone call. Let me think about it. And I'm like, come on, I'll call you back as a date. Just as you can imagine, of any promoter talking to any talent. And it was always, let me think on it. The time needs to be right. Just all the different factors, but the money obviously always got to be there. But it was just on his part, I guess, would be he wanted to see how the brand was maturing.
So you think that's what I wanted to ask, because when you said the time is right, boy, you could go with that a million different ways. The time is not right for me personally in my relationship with my wife. The time is not right for me personally with travel with my kids at home. The time is not right for me personally because I'm not in the physical shape that I would want to be in on TV. There's lots of variations of the way that conversation could go. But then there is the other side of the time's not right from, I'm not sure that I want to be in business with your organization yet. Maybe it's not something he takes personally, like he likes you and he likes your dad, but does he really want to sort of hitch his wagon to this? Or need to see a little more. Is that the way you took it? And did you take that as a slight?
No, I took it as a businessman thinking out for himself, which he should. And he was honest about it. It wasn't, hey, let me find out the kid's schedule. Let me find out. He was like, Jeff, things got to be right. Let me think on this. Tell me a little bit more about your company. Tell me a little bit about this. And so, you got to be prepared, one, but you can't, a guy like Sting's been around. You can't BS him. And so we would have Matthew Odie, our international agent. Hey, okay, what's an update there? Oh, Australian pay-per-views are coming in, or whatever it may be. We would have different little tidbits of information that would show that the brand is growing.
Let's talk a little bit about another episode that's going to be set up here. It's a main event for the tag titles between Triple X and the New Church. I want to bring this up because this is very much the era where you've got guys who are allowed to work indies and outside appearances freely. I mean, you've been pretty honest about that, hey, we couldn't afford to pay most of these guys a full-time living. So, hey, we're a Wednesday night show. Your weekends are free. Do your thing. However, a guy like Loki and Christopher Daniels, they're going to be making trips to Japan. Is that something does that change things? Because it's not like you can just fly over there for the weekend and come right back. Most of the time, that's going to be a longer trip. What was that process like in this era for those talents who went abroad?
The simple deal was it's all on a case-by-case basis. A guy like Daniels, very, very good in the ring, very, very dependable, can have a match with anybody. He comes to you and says, hey, I'm going to miss 3 Wednesdays, maybe 4. You go, when you can confirm the dates, let us know and we'll work around it. Another guy that maybe just kind of walking in the door, hey, I've got Japan commitments. Thank you very much. There's probably not a lot of upside for us starting you here because you're going to be gone. It's truly a case-by-case basis.
Well said. There is a skit here that's going to happen on the show that maybe feels a little recycled. You get kidnapped on the show.
Oh, Lord. Okay.
Which, of course, Meltzer would say, or Wade would say, it's Russo's writing based off of an old Steve Austin angle. Quote, the Russo group, all wearing masks and army fatigues, kidnapped Jarrett. Rhodes did his cameo, doing one promo and then leaving to find Jarrett. The show ended with Russo in the ring, talking to a masked guy wearing Glenn Gilberti's clothes, and apparently him, but then Gilberti crawled from down the ramp in his underwear. Jarrett unmasked to attack Russo as the show went off the air. Nice swerve here, but maybe a little hokey. Talk to me about this.
Yeah, I remember pictures as in the notes, all that. It's a 2-hour episodic. Where are they going with it? Vince, in a lot of ways, to his credit and to his discredit, you just kind of touched on it. It was a pay-per-view, so we need to make sure we're giving them marquee matches, but you also got to have the episodic nature. So he looked at it as a television show. The opening act or the opening segment is a kidnapping, and we pay it off at the end, and a little bit of a swerve with Gilberti, and we have a fight, and the episodic storytelling's done. Nothing more, really nothing less to read into it other than that.
Did you like this angle, the swerve, where it's you got kidnapped and you're actually under the hood at the end?
Yeah, I mean, it's a simple payoff. It's not like I loved it, but I certainly did not like it. I mean, it's I hate to say another episode. It's all in the let me just say that it's all in the execution.
Well, and let's tell the truth too. I mean, this is something that I think a lot of people forget about, but this is not something where it's like a movie where we had the script and we fine-lined it and drilled it down for the last 3 years. And now we've got our site locations and we're going to shoot a few different takes. We came up with some shit 3 days ago and now we're going to go do it live and hope it works. And then we're going to do it again next week. Like on some level, this is a factory. You're doing 52 of these a year. So maybe it's not going to be Forrest Gump, the greatest movie you've ever seen or whatever. But man, I got to have 2 hours this Wednesday. So we got to do something.
This is what I would tell Mike and Don. I would tell Shivani. I told Shivani and Excalibur, their jobs narrating the story. And I just think when you kind of look back on the Attitude Era in JR and the King, the timing of when to talk and when not to talk.
Huge.
Oh, God. Just like our cadence and our rhythm is that I feel a lot of times I feel like I step on you, but in when you do a angle or storyline of Jarrett getting kidnapped, one silly line, Mike or Don completely takes you out of the moment.
Yes.
If you let it breathe and like, you can kind of emotionally go, now, you know, they ain't really kidnapping him. They're going to take him out the back of this building and beat the shit. Whatever. Maybe they're going to go to it. Whatever. It's all in that emotional connection. I mean, not to belabor the point, but the last Outlaw Orange Cassidy match, we kind of took people on an emotional ride that had them laughing and, oh, what's going to go here? And then just, again, the roller coaster. You can do it in a match. You can do it in a segment. You can do it in a show.
Well said. And I'll tell you what else you can do anywhere you want to. And that's Blue Chew. Old Orange Cassidy was lucky that he didn't get to see all of The Last Outlaw because he hits you with parts of himself and, well, you're going to be selling for days. All right. Let me just say that. And that's because of Blue Chew. And we all know that confidence can take you far in life. Hell, sometimes it'll take you to a parking lot in Nashville and beat up a grandpa. Other times it'll take you to Canada, steal an international championship. Jeff Jarrett knows a lot about confidence, and he knows a lot about getting that ding dong real hard. You hear me? BlueChew.com. Think of it as like a hot tag for your wiener. It's a unique online service that delivers you the same active ingredients as Viagra and Cialis, but in chewable form. And how about this? A fraction of the cost. If you know just a handful of things about Jeff Jarrett, you know my man can eat. My man don't like to spend a lot of money. My man likes to stay hard. Blue Chew checks all the boxes. Take up any time, day or night. You can plan ahead or be ready whenever an opportunity arises. The process is simple. Sign up at BlueChew.com, consult with one of their licensed medical providers, and once you're approved, you'll receive your prescription within days. And here's the best part. It's all online. That means no visits to the doctor's office, no awkward conversation, no waiting in line at the pharmacy. It's made right here in the USA. It's prepared and shipped right to your door in a discreet package, but there won't be anything discreet about your package. So if you could benefit from extra confidence when it's time to perform, chew it and do it, y'all. Let's have some better sex. By the way, I just want to remind you that Jeff Jarrett's finishing maneuver is called the stroke. I haven't tried to hit you over the head with that like a guitar or an erection, but I just want you to know Jeff Jarrett's finish is the stroke. And we've got a special deal for our listeners. Try Blue Chew free when you use our promo code MyWorld at checkout. Just pay $5 shipping. That's BlueChew.com. The promo code is MyWorld to receive your first month free. Visit BlueChew.com for more details and important safety information. And we want to thank Blue Chew for sponsoring today's podcast. And of course, Jeff Sweener. The stroke, Jeff. I mean, it is the patented maneuver.
Conrad?
Yes, sir.
This is episode 98.
Yep.
And it's taken you 98 episodes to draw the analogy of the stroke and Blue Chew. I'm proud of you.
Well, here's the thing. I didn't want to hit people over the head with it. I felt like we were getting a lot of mileage On the regular reads, yes. But now, I mean, here's the reality. You've all seen Jeff Jarrett stroke a lot of women. I mean, he's been stroking broad since 1998 on TV. I bet I have it on good authority. He was doing it in the 80s too, but it wasn't always cameras present. But now you can stroke it like Jeff Jarrett. Just check out some Blitz.
Oh, God.
All righty. The angle where the heels are massacring you is Raven's going to tie you to the ring post, and they all whip your back with a belt. It's going to be all cut up with welts. This is the same angle where you unmasked. Wade would say you were not too happy. Quote, Jeff Jarrett was said to be hot over the beatdown angle that was taped for the February 12th show. The attack was said to be violent to the point that Jarrett had major welts left on his back, but that wasn't the reason Jarrett was upset. Multiple sources report that Jarrett felt the SCX wrestlers didn't work him over enough. He was said to be so mad, he didn't even want to talk with Vince Russo after the show. Talk to me about this. Take me back in time, 20 years ago. Listen, they welt you up. There's cuts on your back. You're bleeding. So in an old country whipping match, it feels like we've checked all the boxes, but you're still upset. What gives?
I think my best recollection was pretty simple in that they kidnapped me, and I somehow, some way outsmarted them. Reveal that kind of blows the heat off there, Conrad. Like completely. Throw in a little bit of comedy with Glenn, with Disco coming down the aisle. Okay, that's fine too. If we're going to go that route, I can almost hear me having the conversation with Russo. Then Russo, pal, if we're going to get any heat on the SCX crew, you guys, it's got to get uncomfortable with a lot of folks, including your talent. And they whipped me pretty good, but you can whip somebody pretty good in under 60 seconds. But as far as it resonating at home, you need to beat that baby. Now, it was taught to me. Watch go down in Louisville or Evansville or Lufkin, Texas, or whatever it may be. You can beat a guy down and let him sell for a minute or two, and then you go back and you beat him up a little more, and then maybe get on the mic and talk a little trash, and then you got to go back and beat him up a little bit more, and then act like you're leaving the ring. And then, no, certainly they're not going to do this again. Look at that. And now, because there's been 15 camera shots and welts on the back, you go back again and get it more. And it's one of those times that you got to make the viewer feel, all right, now that's enough. Now that's enough. If you do that all in 60 seconds, the human emotion. Does that make sense, Connie?
You nailed it. What I really like is the way you said uncomfortable. You need them to feel uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And the person who was uncomfortable in this post-match brawl, which went about 10 minutes after the tag title match, is the stage manager. They get knocked out cold when Lee lands on her. Who was the stage manager who got knocked out? Do you remember this? And listen, this is 20 years ago. This is very much in the lawsuit era. Were you nervous that, boy, this could be bad for us?
So Ellen, I don't recall it being like a one of those deliberate, oh no, kind of deals. I don't know that she got like knocked out cuckoo, but I think she took a blow. And she was at ringside. Look, in the asylum, we had people on top of people. That announce desk was really close to the ring. Mike and Don felt like they were on top of the action. You had all kind of audio cables and video cables, and it was a cramp area over there. And as the night would go on, they would continue to kind of lose real estate. So I'm not saying that I was shocked. And then who did they say? Brian Lee landed on her.
Yeah.
That doesn't surprise me to this day.
What does that mean?
That's Brian. I'm not saying. I'm just saying, and I'm not saying he's reckless, but he probably felt comfortable enough and knew Ellen and knew all the players. I just say, like a lot of us, but Brian didn't always think 2 or 3 steps down the line. to say the least.
Fair enough. It's also reported in the Observer that Amazing Red was slated to win the X title, but at some point, due to his All Japan tour, that was shelved, and the plan was to get the belt to Kid Cash from Sonny Siaki. Is this the era? I mean, because there is it feels like there's a lull. You know, when TNA first gets going, it doesn't feel like there's a lot of other big opportunities out there, but it does feel like there becomes some momentum both in Mexico and Japan. And now some of your talent is going to have more options. Was Amazing Red one of those guys like Low Key where, hey, we'd love to have you, but if we can't, we can't?
No, I mean, just think about Red going on a 3-week tour with All Japan in 2003. That's the reality. And, you know, it's kind of, I'm not saying All Japan saw Red on TNA and wanted him, but just being kind of in the DNA and things rolling along, the more and more we use talent, the more and more they became attractive to other promoters. Again, we were putting them in episodic storytelling format, and that's how talent get over.
Let's talk a little bit about the way that the business is changing in regards to pre-produced interviews. You said earlier you were trying to make it a point to have guys like BG James have an interview, and then maybe we're going to finish with some physicality. Conan is up next, and Wade had this to say. Conan did what was described as being the most well-prepared interview in the history of the company, as he was studying notes all day. Apparently, he cut a first interview, which was said to be even better than the one that aired, but Jerry Jarrett felt at about 7 minutes it was too long. He did a second shorter but similar one. He brought up racism against Latinos, but his delivery almost made him a babyface doing so, while claiming Jarrett, McMahon, and Bischoff were racist promoters, and there was a lack of Latinos in power. Then bringing up that boxing is largely carried by Latinos on pay-per-view, noting most of the big draws behind Tyson are Latinos. And of course, there is a little bit of irony here because we know eventually Conan would sue TNA over racial discrimination. Conan, man, super talented, a genius mind in wrestling, kind of the hub for a lot of wrestling even to this day. But the idea that you're going to have him on camera saying, yeah, the Jarretts are a racist promoter on your own show. Wow. Talk me through this.
And look, we've gone into detail what I think about Conan and his legacy, how talented he is with his mind, but as a talent. And yes, I was always marveled at he can create emotion in both languages, both Spanish and English. But this promo, I remember there's certain things I do remember. So I remember this promo or the setting, what Mike is wearing right there when that picture flashed up. It took me back to that time. It was a promo that we wanted to kind of walk that line again, blurring reality. Look, me and my father and others were sitting there, producing it, and me and Conan had talked about it, but we wanted to walk down that avenue that at the end of the day, he is the antagonist. And so give us something to rebuttal. And Conan nailed it. Yes, ironic. A couple of years later, but again, it was a promo based on reality. When you kind of look at, God, and we're talking 2003 about the Hispanic audience, how, and in those days it's De La Hoya, and I'm just trying to think of the other big box office attractions in 2003 in boxing, but he was spot on. And when you kind of look at the style of wrestling that was coming in and what we were doing with the X division was a hybrid. It was part Lucha Libre, part Japan Strong Style, all that. What he said in the promo was just, to me, a really, really good professional wrestling heel promo.
Let's talk about somebody else you're going to bring in, not as a heel, but boy, maybe the ultimate sympathetic babyface. He first got a dark match. I guess you guys like what you saw, and now you're going to put Zach Gowen on TV, and he even gets a win over Road Dogg. And of course, Raven attacks him after the win, but still, this is a guy who's, I don't know. Just talk to me about this whole Zach Gowen opportunity. I mean, here he is, a one-legged wrestler. A lot of us saw him in his WWF run. Now he's here in TNA. What'd you think? What can you tell us about Zach?
I mean, today I'm going to give Zach a shout out. I am so happy for him and proud of where he's at today. In these early days, I always had mixed emotions on coming from my background and territory days and kayfabe and realism and excuse me, how's the audience going to take to this? Well, you see one time and listen to the crowd and him doing a moonsault or whatever it may be, and how athletically Zach is. I was sold right away, but it was like, how are we going to navigate our way through the storytelling process of Zach with his, physical condition? Who is the right opponent? How will we get there? Again, you do that with any talent, but with something that is so visually enticing, just mesmerizing, how gifted he is. But how are we going to do this justice?
We also see in the torch you're talking to Dale Torberg, who we know from WCW, and Paul London. Was Dale friends with some of the boys? What was the creative, or what was the thinking with Dale?
I mean, me and Dale knew each other from WCW. Vince Russo knew Dale. He knew the Atlanta crew, whoever it may be. He knew a bunch of us. And loves, and to this day he loves professional wrestling. And so again, whether it was Vader or Dusty Rhodes or the Rock and Roll Express or whoever it may be during the Asylum years, we wanted to give them a shot and just let them step up to the plate and let's see what happens, because we had our core and our mainstays, AJ and America's Most Wanted and whoever else in that core group, but we wanted to keep continuing to bring talent in again, opportunity and see what happens.
You want to talk about talent? Boy, our band Don West had a bunch, but he was fit to be tied. There's a little skit here where Russo is going to be ringside and throw water all over him. I don't know that Don was expecting that, and apparently he is pretty upset during and after the show. Do you remember Don being pissed off about Russo throwing water on him?
It would be Don during this era wore his bright silk shirts, and they made him stand out. Look, but when you put water all over one, it doesn't look near as attractive. And I got that. And Don, he came to me a number of times and said, look, if it happens organically, I'm fine with that. But just to throw water for no reason, and I'm like, Don, you're right. It's inexcusable. It's taking advantage of a situation, but that's kind of the nature of being. So how do we fix this? But yeah, OP-Dub, he had a fuse. It was a long fuse, but when he exploded, he exploded.
Let's talk a little bit about Kurt Hennig. Unfortunately, he passes away on February 9th. I'm sure you had grown up watching his stuff in the AWA, and then of course that Mr. Perfect run, and then spent some time with him in the WCW locker room. And he had even been a part of some TNA shows with you guys early on. And to see that he passes away so young, man, just awful news. What do you remember about that news?
I know exactly. I could take you to the Cracker Barrel. It's the one me and Vince used to meet at. And back early, I remember text and disbelief. Obviously, I had no idea about the disease of addiction or anything that went with it. It was Mr. Perfect passed away. A guy that, and look, here I'm going to take you back to 86, 87, 89. Mike Winkle came in and he was the AWA champion, and Nick was in his early 50s, or late 40s, early 50s, through the 80s. So I watched him before Nick Bockwinkel, before I got in the business. And then as I got into the business, I had that one match with him, but watched him and Lawler wrestle and all that. Then all of a sudden, here comes Kurt Hennig, and the athletic, just super charismatic and fun to be around and talkative. And, again, a lot of people, when they see Kurt or hear Kurt's name, and they think Mr. Perfect and all that. But the first lens that I looked at Kurt through, he's the son of a wrestler. His dad was too, just like me. So that's how we immediately bonded, just like I bonded with Owen or any other second generation guys. Dustin Rhodes, when I met him out in Texas in 87, 88. Just go out. And then all of a sudden, you see kind of pictures and images and hear stories of Larry the Axe. And then all of a sudden you see Kurt. His athleticism from day one blew me away. And then the match him and Lawler had, and Lawler became champion, and just all that. Then, of course, you see Kurt through the years go off. And look, the Mr. Perfect gimmick, I loved it. I absolutely loved the gimmick, the basketball, the vignettes, and all that kind of stuff that Vince knew how to do that era, just got talent over. But then, of course, had just my memories of Kurt as an in-ring performer, and also a guy that I wrote up down, made up. So when he would come in, a lot of times he would do Memphis and Louisville only. That means after the Memphis show, we'd have to get him back to Nashville, and then he'd go up to Louisville and then fly out, or whatever it may be. But he was always so good to me in the early years, and then later on, and then, just hanging around him. And when we got a chance to, and we've documented this, and bring him into TNA, it just wasn't the Kurt I knew at all. But still, with that being said, looking across the table at Vince, getting the news, it was just still kind of shocking and just in disbelief. And, wow, so young. It hit me in a different way. Just did, because I felt like I'd known him, quote unquote, my entire career, which I had.
Let's talk about somebody that you're going to come to know pretty well, the Carter family. They're going to show up prior to the February 12th event. And of course, they own Panda Energy and now the majority share in TNA. And they're going to introduce themselves to the talent. And we're going to do an all hands on meeting where Don Harris is going to remind the wrestlers, don't brawl or do anything near the announcer's desk. We can't lose audio for the show. Of course, Wade would point out maybe the biggest culprit of that had been Russo. And he also says, guys, you're showing too much light when you're in the ring. We need you to work tighter. And that might result in some accidental step shots. Please don't retaliate in the ring. Talk through it backstage after. You've acknowledged before here on the program that you are not a big fan of these big group meetings, but yet they keep happening. What do you remember about the Carter showing up and coming to meet the talent? And do you recall anything about Don Harris basically saying, hey, y'all, snug it up a little bit?
Well, whoever it may be, whether it's Ron and Don or my dad or Bob Ryder, I'm just trying to think, Dixie during this era, whoever, a lot of guys or a lot of people still kind of like those big team meeting settings. As you just said, I've never really thought it's a productive setting. I think it can be, things can be said and maybe taken out of context and not the right message delivered for whatever reason. But hey guys, if you wanted to have the meeting, have at it. I chuckled when I read out of Don Harris saying that. I don't have complete proof. Maybe we'll ask Donnie one day. My gut tells me Donnie's saying, hey, Jeff, do you want me to say anything on your behalf of the meeting? And I'd say, nope. And maybe he went to Bob Ryder or whoever, and he might have gone to my dad. And my dad said, yeah, tell him to tighten it up out there. I've seen too much phony. You know what I'm saying? I can just see my old man saying, boys, I don't want to see daylight. Apologize backstage, but this phony stuff, blah, 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 blah. But that's about the group settings and team meetings and all that. But as far as the Carters coming to town, what month is this? Because
February of 2003.
So they came in Labor Day. So we're almost 6 months, Conrad, which I thought was a long, long time. That's what kind of talked me back. I'm like, man, it took y'all long enough because people, they knew Dixie, but it's like Bob and Janet were Mr. is Wizard of Oz. They were the folks in Dallas that they're the ones who stepped up to the plate, because whether it's me or my father or Dixie, we would refer to the Carter family or Panda or Bob or whatever it may be. It was great. And look, the whole family they're very charismatic and very, very easy to talk to and personable. Bob, Janice, and Dixie's brother Todd, they've all got some, the kids got Bob and Janice in them, and Bob and Janice have been married forever. But anyway, it was great show, legitimate show of, hey, we're here, and I know it's a talent because I've been a talent and I am a talent. Okay, that's where the money from. You can connect immediately. It's everyone knew we were in investment mode and that we were not creating black ink. So, okay, where is this dollar coming from? Okay, it's coming from Bob and Janice.
Something else I want to talk about that we touched on earlier, sort of sowed the seeds for. You did a dark match with Zach Gowen. It went well. You put him on TV. He gets a win over Road Dogg. And then Dave Meltzer would say it led to one of the strangest negotiation stories in recent times. Tenacious Z, which is the name that Zach Gowen wrestles under, verbally agrees to a contract on February 14th for allegedly $52,000 a year as a downside guarantee. This is just 2 days after he had been offered a contract by TNA, this same show, February 12th. Bob Ryder handed him a $500 per shot offer for 26 dates. So 13 grand is the guarantee from TNA, 52,000 is the guarantee from WWE. And Meltzer would say this is example number 5,526 of why a promotion needs to have its talent signed before putting them on television. TNA had never been rated before, so they hadn't learned the lesson the hard way. But 20 years of history should have told them this from day one. Behind the scenes, it's written here that Jeremy Borash was a big advocate for bringing in Gowen and thought of all the marketing possibilities, and he helped get to work where they got confirmations that the USA Today and People Magazine were both going to do stories on him, as well as an appearance on the Best Damn Sports Show, period. And there was at least preliminary interest in doing something on the David Letterman show. And now, 2 days after you offer the contract, he's gone. He's going to WWE. How frustrated are you when this happens? And I guess who gets the blame, if that's the right phrase?
And I would have taken all the blame, because in reality, just what I stated, I was always, where are we going to go maybe after storyline 1 and maybe even 2? A long-term plan. I immediately said, I can't wait to see what Vince does with him. The success story, the personal interest story, everything that goes with it. On Zach's best day, he was going to make $26,000 with us.
Right.
That's the reality. And so for him to get an opportunity, did I hate that it happened for the TNA brand? Absolutely. And I'm sure I'll talk about that. From a personal point of view, is this guy's about to go get on a huge stage. And I said it, I said it today and I said it back then. A long-term plan, yes, you can get him in a tag and everything with that, but it's a week in, week out. That's not going to be the easiest talent to create the episodic, because there comes a point then the same angle and the same heel and the same protagonist has kind of the same lines and work toward his, I don't even want to call it a disability, because dude is unbelievably talented, but his physical situation. But how do you keep going with it? Anyway, I was happy for Zach. I really was.
It's also written that Vader is going to be signing a deal. Quote, the knee injury story from the last Noah tour was a cover story, and apparently he's lost his Japan gig under what can only be called mysterious circumstances. Talk to me about Vader. What did you think of working with Vader more and more in TNA here?
Big Leon. sweetheart of a guy. Obviously, this is 2003. He and I don't have a lot of recollection on the Japan deal and how all that went down, but he was going to be another guy, never a long term. But if we could get him for a 4-6 week program, great. It'd be good for him, good for us, and then kind of move on, and then kind of back to the throwback of the territory days. In 3 or 4 months, if you have another spot for Leon as a one-off, bring him in again. That photo that was just showed, standing side by side at Dusty Rhodes, there's money in that. Just that image of two guys and Big Leon's going to take care of the dust. And it goes without saying, and that tag team right there, he's going to be all the talk and all the selling, and Leon is going to clean house, and they're going to give him a finish and go home.
This February 12th show, we know that your dad is not there. He's on a vacation that it's written in the Observer that his wife insisted upon. I can't help but wonder, was he not there because he knew Panda was going to be there?
See, I immediately, knowing what we know now, did he strategically? Then on the other hand, he's done that his entire career. Hey, Lawler, I'm going on vacation. Well, wait, Jerry, I don't care. I've already booked my fishing charter boat for 3 days. I'm leaving. Well, Jerry, I really need you to be here. Hey, man, if you think I'm going to be there, don't hold your breath. It could have gone either way.
Talk to me about the influx of ECW talent. We just talked about how Raven's here, and now all of a sudden Steve Corino and Sandman are going to debut on this same show. Were you just trying to lean into it? You thought maybe, hey, the Raven thing went well, let's do some more? Or maybe if they come in, we can tell some more backstory. I mean, you see in the photo, if you're watching along with us, Sandman debuts wearing a Raven t-shirt. Is it more of we need stuff for Raven to do, or something else?
Opinion too much for Raven was kind of the heart and soul of it. And who should we bring in? Familiarity. I'm sure Raven in his pitches to Russo. Hey, what about Sandman? Hey, what about Corino? Both those guys available, both super talented. Let's give it a shot. Again, nothing was going to be long-term other than Raven and Sandman and Corino. And when I say short-term, it could have been a week or a month or 3 months, but long-term storytelling, Raven was our guy. So how do we tell those episodic heartbeats and stories? Guys.
JJ Dillon and Vince Russo are going to appear on this show, and they're going to have a skit together. And frankly, it doesn't go well. Dillon is supposed to be the new babyface commissioner, sort of something he did in WCW, I guess. But Russo is going to come out and allegedly say some quote unquote shoot comments towards JJ Dillon that he wasn't ready for. Do you remember this? And was that par for course with Vince? He liked to, and I'm not saying he's out of bounds. I'm just saying as a creative writer and the guy putting this together, he wanted the more natural reaction. He wanted it to feel more real. Or in your mind, is that a no-no?
Folks, on my world, I'm probably going to show up. I wish I could back. I just know this. There was legit heat between Vince Russo and JJ Dillon. So was JJ not aware of what Vince was going to say? I kind of doubt it. I kind of think at this stage, we would have, nobody went into this segment with blinders on, but I have a feeling it was probably some pretty riveting stuff that was fun to report about.
Well, there you go. There's also talk in the newsletters that Juventud Guerrera, Psychosis, and Super Crazy are being considered. There's a rumor that maybe you remember some of Juvi's crazy antics and you're not so bullish on that idea just yet. We see that the pay-per-views in Australia are doing around 3,000 to 4,000 buys when you first have Australian pay-per-view. And maybe there's a new influx of income so we can talk about some other folks coming in. So there's rumors about Sean Waltman returning and New Jack cutting a promo on TNA. And there's even a really cool thing that happens. It's set for March 28th here, 2003. The movie Head of State is going to come out. Maybe you don't recall that one, but Chris Rock is the star. And Chris Rock actually appears on a TNA set in a TNA ring in the movie. How in the world does that come to be, Jeff?
Cold email to the office. And we're like, hey, can you film it? And we kind of drilled down onto it. And I went, oh, now it makes sense. they asked the WWE, and WWE wanted no part of it.
Right.
Nope, you can't use our ring. Nope, we can't do this. Nope, we got to control that. And they went, okay, we'll pass. And then they kind of did their research and say, hey, down in Nashville, they're shooting a pay-per-view every Wednesday night. Contacted us. We shot it 15 minutes after we went off the air. People stayed. They were into it. Chris Rock and his entire team were elated that they got what they wanted. And it's you know, as it's off to the races. It was in the movie and a lot of fun. And again, you know, I can't call it a big publicity stunt, but TNA was branded somewhat.
The Torch would write that the pay-per-view sales are still requiring TNA to run a loss. You're yet to be profitable, so you're naturally still preferring to find a network home for free television. You have been unsuccessful and shut out. They've even been reports. There have even been reports that Fox News or Fox Sports Network, rather, FSN, they might consider it, but you would have to pay to be on their TV. And the pay-per-view buy rates have apparently slipped to the point where there's even a threat and a worry and a wonder that DirecTV might actually cancel you guys off of pay-per-view. But it's said that you guys actually meet with them and the in-demand officials and convince them to, rather than throw in the towel, how about trying to market us a little more? I guess the deal's going to come up in June. Were you nervous that not only are you unsuccessful in finding television, but we might lose our pay-per-view too here? And do you remember this meeting with in-demand and DirecTV?
It was never a deal, because going into it, gosh, it's such a different era when you really think about it. But the Sunday pay-per-views, which were wrestling, Saturdays were boxing, you know, but the replays for wrestling, this is where it's so weird for our audience listening today. Really? Well, the replays were not on, they were Tuesday. So what's the best night of the week? On Thursday nights, in demand and direct and dish, they wanted folks to sit down and buy a movie. God, I feel like I'm talking about something in like black and white television. But Wednesday night was a easy night for them. Very, very, very little bandwidth of anything they did. And they could market us if they had an event on Sunday, but they would market us Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and then they really wouldn't market us again to the following, you know, Sunday-ish, and then Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. So I was never, I don't think those ever got this. One we want to throw in there, as we were, you know, the cash flow, and we're still inside a year. I mean, we launched in June, and now we're 9 months in. But the Australian pay-per-view, and I can remember thinking, we did 2,000 or 3,000 on our first one, and maybe it got up to 4, but still, you take the entire country of Australia, it's minuscule compared to the pay-per-view audience in the United States. Had we extrapolated out in America like we did in Australia, Conrad, it would have been an entirely different story, but it wasn't. But still, a little growth in revenue from Australia. You know, our numbers, they are what they were, but that was the reality. We were never, to my understanding, I was, and I would have known, we were never in serious consideration. Wednesday night live.
Well, there are some other names that we should at least mention that are floating around here. You're going to debut a new character called Disgraceland, which is former WCW wrestler Luther Biggs, who Wade would say, for those of you who are interested in obscure trivia, this is the guy that Kevin Nash stole the big sexy name from. I have to admit, I've never heard that, but Wade wrote it here in 2003. And the gimmick is that Glenn Gilberti is introducing stupid gimmicks as entertainment. So he's horribly out of shape, and his gimmick is he's the real Elvis, and he's going to keep eating peanut butter sandwiches while missing moves. What in the world are you doing here?
Let's move on. No, I mean,
we got Vader and Dusty Rhodes teaming up against the Harris brothers. Eric Watts is going to be coming into the company. I mean, it feels like this is almost like a fever dream. It's like if you just put every name of every wrestler on Cage Match into a hat and pulled them out, we're just going to see what we can put together. But when it's all shook out, Bob Armstrong quits. The Observer would say he was making $300 a show. and he felt like he deserved a raise. He asked for $350 a show. Wanted an extra $50, and you and your dad told him to go kick rocks. So Brian and Scott, his sons, may have also quit, but perhaps it wasn't related to that, according to the Observer. Dave would say they were all at the show on February 19th, but they walk out together in the afternoon and go home. My goodness. What do you remember about this?
I wish I could recall if Bob Ryder delivered that news or Jarrett or I did, but I do remember I had a strong sense leading up to that Wednesday, the prior Wednesdays. Bob was tired of making that drive.
Yeah.
I mean, just from Pensacola to Nashville and back.
A long way.
Look, he was tired of it. And I don't really think it's about the $50. And with us being in a deficit, he knew he wasn't going to get that. I truly believe that. And had he got it, I think he still would have kept it.
I mean, in fairness to your point, it's a 13, 14-hour round trip for him in the car.
Yeah.
And he's getting up there in age, and I mean, you ain't got to do all that.
Yeah, and it wasn't Brian and Scott. None of the three of them were making enough money for them to. They're vets. They had done their time, and they were tapping out.
The Torch would also write that perhaps one of the problems you're having with your pay-per-view companies is because of your price point. The idea being, because your show is $9.95 and it's a rev share, this is considered sort of second rate, even to something like World Wrestling All-Stars, the WWA show that McManus ran, because he charged $20. So is this a perception is reality thing, do you think, with the pay-per-view companies? On the one hand, I know where you're thinking. Let's make it affordable for fans. Let's give a lot of value, and let's make it consistent, because we're not just going to ask for $20 every now and again. We're going to ask for $10 every week. It's not like McManus was running 2 pay-per-views a month. So in the long run, sure, if you have ardent TNA fans who are buying every week, you're going to make more money. The opposite side of that argument is, well, we're only making $5 every time we sell one of your pay-per-views. Did you ever consider that a negative?
Well, yes. The short answer is I could get so long-winded on the amount of time that we contemplated going just to $14.99. And that would be, in reality, another $2 and change for us per buy. Does that affect our bottom line that much? And so Panda, us in Nashville, just kind of that debate, even with the pay-per-view companies, is it worth the juice? There was a lot of discussion about that. Does it send a different message, good or bad? Yeah. So Conrad, over and over and over and over and over. Yes. We had. Let's
talk about Jimmy Yang. It comes in here that he's sent home because he refused to sign a one-night contract. Maybe he's thinking there's a non-compete in the contract. Is this one-night contract stuff? Is this born out of the whole Zach Gowen circumstance?
No, it's a release, and I think that's why I don't remember Jimmy. But I'm not saying it wasn't him, because we had several that would say, "I'm not signing anything," and we're going to say, well, you're not going to work if you don't at least sign a release. Well, I don't want to read all this. Y'all going to put something. Well, okay. And then Bob would go off the guy. They would go word for word and say, do you see anything that you're contractually bound after you leave the ring tonight? I mean, that was the era we were living in. We are not going to sign anything to anybody. Because again, help me out with this. In 2003, it was OVW. Was Deep South and FCW up and running by then? I think they were.
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, so WWE had quite a bit of developmental going on, and everybody wanted their shot. And yes, Mexico and Japan, and to the lesser degree Europe, but nobody wanted to be contractually obligated to anybody in case WWE called.
Let's talk a little bit about Mike Tyson. It comes out that you and Jeremy Borash went to see Mike Tyson fight in Memphis on February 22nd. Were you there to try to see if maybe you could have a conversation, or are you there just because, hey, it's in my home state? I'm a big sports fan. How many times is Mike Tyson going to fight here?
It wasn't to talk to Mike. It wasn't because I'm a big boxing fan. It was strictly to have conversations with the pay-per-view providers in a non-business,
Got it.
It was just a smoosh fest. Let's go talk to them. We're relaxed and that. That was.
Talk to me about this Vader Dusty Rhodes match. We saw a picture of them earlier. I mentioned they wrestled the Harris boys. They don't win. The Harris boys are going to be protected. I guess they do win, but it's a DQ. And it's written here that the twins are Jeff's friends. And the feeling is, since they lost to Chris Harris and James Storm the previous week, they didn't want them losing pinfalls in 2 straight weeks. Listen, I understand that sounds good in the newsletter. I'm not arguing with Wade on what he believes happened. But it would be really hard for me to imagine that one of the Harris boys had a problem laying down for Dusty Rhodes. My goodness.
My gut tells me Leon liked Ron and Don, and Dusty loved Ron and Don. So I don't know what happened in the following weeks, but I can hear Dusty essentially saying, we don't need to beat him. That ain't going to get us anywhere. You beat them last week. Don't worry. We don't need to beat them. Matter of fact, that may hurt the rhythm of where we're going with this.
Meltzer's going to write a lot about the state of the finances of the company. He's going to say that if they're doing between 7,000 and 10,000 buys every week, they're taking in 40 grand a week, but the shows are costing about 80 grand a week. So if you add in another 16,000 a month from Australia and a few thousand at the live gate, you're probably losing somewhere between $30,000 to $45,000 every week. Is that the way you remember that? That you were
so 80 to 100 with the expense and revenue 40 to 60ish. But look, if we're going to drill down into March, I don't know, but I do remember this specifically, multiple conversations. If we're losing 25 a week, that's just a little over $1 million a year if you extrapolate it out. And that's worst case scenario. Those kind of numbers on an investment, when you hear electric power plant numbers, it's pennies. Is it real money? You have to do that? Yes. But if you're going to invest and you're over there looking at the only organization in the marketplace, the WWE, publicly traded, I could remember, if we can create 1/10 of their revenue in managed costs, it wasn't a massive investment. And so again, the building blocks, that's what made everyone that was involved in these days, when you start turning a profit on the spike days, it's like it was month after month after month that on that train going uphill, and then in that investment mode. Once we started making money and became profitable, it was such a sense of victory, if for the lack of a better word, that, okay, the little engine that could finally kind of persevered through all this. But we did our best. You said it earlier. Jeff was wearing 4 or 5 hats. Jeremy Borash, it goes without saying, he did the exact same thing. There was a lot of folks that wore a lot of hats in these asylum years eras. And I think hindsight's 20/20, but looking back on it, the fans knew that. They kind of knew our tight-knit organization were out there busting their ass week in and week out.
Well, I'll tell you what, you don't have to be busting your ass week in and week out. Thanks to our friends over at Sunday. It doesn't feel like it right now, Jeff, but spring is upon us, and that means it's going to start to warm up, and we're all going to want to spend a little more time outside. But I want to enjoy the outside. I don't want to have to be working in my yard, digging in the garden. Sunday makes it easy. Take one more thing off my to-do list, and instead of spending time working on my yard, I get to spend my time in my yard, thanks to Sunday. You see, Sunday is everything you need to get the lawn you've always dreamed of. This spring, go to getsunday.com/myworld and enter your address to get a customized plan created just for your lawn. No trips to the store or hauling heavy bags since they ship it all straight to your home. And by the way, you just need a hose to apply Sunday. You can fertilize your whole doggone lawn in less time than it takes to watch an episode of your favorite TV show. By the way, they only use ingredients you feel good about at Sunday. That means no harsh chemicals, no waiting in line, no waiting periods, no trying to keep your kids and your pets off your lawn. Just simply apply and let it dry. You're back to enjoying your yard. You see, Sunday is easy and affordable. How affordable? Well, I want to mention some lawn care services can cost like $1,500 a year. But Sunday's full season plans start at just $109. And right now, Sunday is offering our listeners 20% off. Full season plans start at just $109, and you can get 20% off when you visit getsunday.com/myworld at checkout. That's getsunday.com/myworld. You'll get 20% off your custom plan at getsunday.com/myworld. And we appreciate Sunday being a sponsor here. Jeff, you live on the lake, got a beautiful yard, looking better than ever thanks to Sunday, right?
Amen. Green it up. Yeah. I love this time of year. Get a good product.
Time of year.
It is, bud. It really is.
Well, it wasn't the best time of year for Vince Russo. We're going to have a skit here. It's a pre-tape segment where Tanae's going to interview Russo at a desk. And Russo is going to announce that he's retiring because wrestling has taken too big of a toll on his family. Between WCW and now having to deal with Jarrett, he can't handle it anymore. Quote, I'm 41 years old and I look at a guy like Kurt Hennig. I don't want to not be here tomorrow and have lost all the time with my kids. This is not an angle. This is me doing the right thing, stepping up to the plate, and living up to my role as a father. The trouble is, it is an angle, and you're using the real life tragedy of a guy who used to work here, who a lot of the guys in the locker room were friends with, passing away just like 10 days prior. This feels
ugly.
Not good.
Yeah.
How did it air?
Good question. Bad decision making, I think, is this. How did the answer to your question, Conrad, would be bad decision making?
On your part, you're saying.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, I'm not the only one, but I'll speak for myself. I would assume Vince would probably say, kind of bad decision making, but I'm not going to speak for him. You know, I mean, certainly hindsight, again, you just look at it and go, we could have told the same story without saying that.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. Well, you're trying to tell a story with Raven and Sandman. It's a Clockwork Orange match. Raven's going to throw Sandman off the rafters through 6 tables, and then he's going to call you out. And during the course of all this, Sandman accidentally knocks the Raven's Nest sign on top of a young fan, and it really cuts this kid open. Of course, Sandman feels horrible about it. Nobody wants anybody to be injured at a wrestling show, much less a kid. Do you remember this?
I do. And look, that shot hey, hats off, Marcus Production. Those guys busted their ass. And I mean, look, it's not for everybody. You know, Ravens, Clockwork Orange, House of Fun match, and everything that went with it. But look, Jim, accident, messed up, careless, whatever. Yeah, the kid. But I mean, it all ended up fine. Again, just kind of a different time, different venue. But that balcony is a balcony, and they're going down below. But the people in the that's where my whole point of this is, man, the folks that came to the asylum, what shows they got. And I know we could go down to the auditorium or the Mid-South Coliseum or the Omni in Atlanta or any venue that you kind of got an emotional connection to. But in 2002, 3, 4, if you saw shows at the asylum, see, in a way, not too much of a throwback, but see a Raven Sandman kind of hardcore match. It was good. It was good.
Dusty Rhodes is going to come out and do a promo here, and he's going to say Jarrett asked him to speak about the new generation of wrestlers, the quote-unquote sons of famous daddies. And he's going to ask 3 new characters here on the program: David Flair, Brian Lawler, and Eric Watts to come to the ring. What did you think of this idea, making a faction out of these second generation guys, David Flair, Eric Watts, and Brian Lawler?
Kind of booking the obvious, but when you look at that image right there, those 3 guys couldn't be more different. Other than their fathers all doing the same profession, all 3 are really, really different guys and definitely different talent. But again, trying to look at the roster top to bottom, you got 3 guys and they all had their certain talents. Let's give it a shot. Let's see how it works out.
Well, you're giving a lot of shots here, including one to Hacksaw Jim Duggan. He's going to pin Mike Sanders. Mike Sanders is thinking he's going to have an enhancement match here, and his eyes bug when it's actually Jim Duggan. Don West reacts like crazy. You would be convinced that Don West is the biggest Hacksaw Jim Duggan mark in history, according to the Torch. D'Lo Brown is also going to make a debut here. He's going to be involved in that hubbub with Dusty Rhodes and the Sons of Famous Daddies, and he's going to cut a promo. I mean, listen, I hate the analogy that you're just trying to throw a bunch of shit against the wall and see what sticks, but that's kind of the way it feels, right?
But I mean, throw, but also make it entertaining. If they're paying, again, if you're paying your $10, you're going to see a Dusty Rhodes. You're going to see a Vader. You're going to see an episodic storyline where Jeff gets captured and comes back and then gets the hell beat out of him. Oh, you're going to see D'Lo, and then you're going to see, oh wow, there's Brian Lawler and Eric Watts and David Flair, and it's the juggling mix. Do we give them 2 hours of the X Division? No. Do we give them 2 hours of a Conan scathing reality-based? No. But the formula of any good wrestling show is diversity, and give them a little bit of something, but make sure you send them home where it's something that's so good they want to come back next week. And that's easier said than done.
We sent them home that day talking about the finish. You got Raven and AJ Styles, and you're involved here, and it comes down to AJ and Raven, and there's 2 referees, and they're going to count 3 at the exact same time, and you're going to ask from the rampway, who won? And the show goes off the air. And Wade would say it was a bad finish for a pay-per-view, but in the interest of being episodic, that's exactly what you want, right? You want them to tune in next week and see what happened.
Again, the juggling act. And to take a couple of steps way, way back from everything. In the early formative years, yes, we want to create revenue, but we also knew we had to create. I mean, there's just no secret about it. Like to draw an analogy, when you watched Saturday night's House Rules event in Troy, Ohio, Darby Allin and Orange Cassidy, 2 homegrown guys, they tore the house down. We were in the kind of the same position. How do we make AJ Styles and a few others, but how do we really, okay, so we were going to tease him with Larry Zbyszko. Okay, let's face him up against Jeff or Raven or whatever it may be. But it's all in those building blocks of creating the brand's own talent. And that is not easy, but you got to stay the course.
Well, you got to stay the course even when maybe this was an accident. Maybe it was intentional. There's a moment on the show everybody's going to be talking about between Lollipop and Hollywood. Lollipop has her top ripped off by Hollywood. They're going to keep going, and no one's going to cover up. So there's exposed breasts here. And the Torch would report that the company had long talked about exposing breasts on one of their events, and then, well, it happened. We know for sure that even though Bruce has denied it, Miss Jackie planned on that UK pay-per-view to have her shirt ripped off and be exposed, and she was. And we know in 1998, Sable did the handprint thing on the Fully Loaded pay-per-view, and that was all planned as well. Was this a planned spot, or was this an accident that we just leaned into? Talk to me about this.
I wish I could. My gut tells me it was planned.
Okay.
It's pay-per-view. we had built kind of a cat fight storyline. Conrad, these two ladies were not seasoned vets. So my gut tells me that it was a planned spot. It's just kind of that simple. I
hate to be that guy, but how do you ask for that? I mean, is this?
And do you know who my gut tells me produced this without having any recollection of like who actually did this?
Love to hear.
Who do you give me one or two guesses? Jeremy Borash, Bob Wright, Vince Russo. I don't know if Dutch was there during this time, but I'm just trying to give you some names to throw out there. I mean,
I think most people would assume that it would be a Vince Russo idea.
Yeah,
but
my gut tells me Jerry Jarrett produced it.
See, to that I just
here's why. Because look, people don't look. I mean, he loved to do outlandish stuff, and in the context of a cat fight / bar fight.
Hang on now, Jeff. Though we just talked a few weeks ago, or maybe at this point it was a few months ago.
Yeah,
about how your dad took issue with some of the coarse language on the show.
Yes,
and talked to the folks and put his foot down. And then we got little people whacking off in trash cans, and now we got naked boobs. Like, that's hard for me to reconcile.
Well, so let's not put it all in. The language is gratuitous. I think that is one bucket. The midget in the trash can, that is. If you ever went to a nightclub, did you ever see a midget pop out of a trash can?
I did not.
Never. When you're producing a TV show and you have standards and practices, you know what you can and can't get by with. So why go gratuitous? If you were to see a bar fight and two guys started duking it out, and then they got pulled apart, and then they went at it again, then they got pulled apart and went at it again, and so everybody went back to dancing and playing music and all this. And at about 2:30 in the night, things kind of went down, and one guy's girlfriend showed up to pick him up, and words were said. And then all of a sudden, oh, no, you didn't. Oh, no, you didn't. Two ladies hooked it up. Do you think there's a chance that some flesh might be seen?
Yes.
That's how my dad would look at it.
So did y'all ever consider, like, maybe there's a skirmish and then one guy pulls a gun on? Oh, y'all did that too. Yeah. So.
I knew you'd come back with a good one.
It's hard for me to imagine that. I don't know. Listen. And here's the thing too. I just know today.
I love doing this podcast with you. You never know what you're going to get.
No, you don't. This podcast with you is like a Forrest Gump box of chocolates analogy. But legitimately, and I'm not saying this to be funny. I'm trying to understand. I'm trying to learn. I struggle with the idea that a man is going to go talk to two ladies.
Yeah.
These days in 2023, this could never happen.
No.
And it's like, okay, we're going to have some physicality, and then I need one of you to let them things out. Like, what? How can we do that?
Can you imagine Jarrett talking to his, we'll call it number 2 guy in Bill Dundee and saying, hey, Bill, here's what I think's going to draw the most money and really make you the most money. Do you mind if
we shave your wife's head? Yeah, I knew you were going to go.
What? Think about that.
But see, here's the thing. I could see then what your dad, I wasn't there, but I imagine when your dad made that pitch, he now put the onus on Bill to go sell it to his wife. Honey, do you want me to do as well as I can in this territory? Yes. Honey, do you want us to make as much money for our family as we can? Yes. Honey, would you want to see me succeed and us have the best lifestyle we can? Yes. I mean, like.
So let me back up. Here's how I think that went down from Dundee. Jerry, hell no. I'll do anything for you, but there is no choice. Bill, do you mind if I talk to her? Hell, go right ahead.
I mean, listen, I almost wish that was here to give us an impression of your dad talking to those ladies.
You think you can get him to do that on the next episode?
Well,
just ask him diplomatically.
Have you girls ever been in like a cat fight, where one girl's upset at another girl. Maybe you girls haven't, but you have some friends, and maybe they got together and they started pulling each other's hair and scratching at each other, and maybe it was on the lake or maybe it was on the beach, and they had their swimsuits on, and well, Lord, in the fight, sometimes when things happen and people are pulling and tussling, and well, goodness gracious, things could come out and be revealed. And we like to lean and err on the side of realism here in TNA. That's total nonstop action, ladies, just so y'all know. Anyway, if y'all could have what looks like a real fight, and if y'all were wearing, like bikini tops, do you think in the course of a real fight between you two ladies, would maybe a top be removed partially? Maybe,
That's it, pal.
And I can just imagine Russo around the corner. Bro, did you sell them on the titty spot? Well, what are we doing?
What are we doing here?
Let's start to put a button on some of this. Chris Sobel is going to be relieved of his duties by Panda Energy. Not only is he no longer overseeing TNA, he's no longer working for Panda. Dixie Carter is in. You've talked about it from the jump. This guy was not necessarily a person you enjoyed dealing with. He was a little rough around the edges and was certainly here to look out for the Panda money, but wasn't really interested in what was best for TNA, et cetera, et cetera. So when he's gone, hate to speak of people losing their job like this, you have to see this as a net positive for you and your company, no?
Conrad Thompson, I had a revelation.
Okay.
One of the things that I literally do, I mean, obviously we get great feedback on the pod and everything, but I love doing it. But I have never looked at the Chris Sobel situation like I looked at it the last couple of days. And I may be totally off base. I may be totally just getting in a rabbit hole that has nothing. But I've said over and over on this show that Chris, he rubbed me wrong, everybody wrong. He was so arrogant and condescending and didn't give a crap what. Okay. But there would be times during that I'm going, he's just doing what Bob wants. I like Chris because Chris and me had many a pleasant conversations. But my God, okay. So with that all being said, what is the best way to put your daughter in power?
I understand.
Do you think, Conrad? I've literally, because Sobel out, and when I heard he was no longer, he wasn't going to be coming to Nashville anymore. He was out of Dallas. He was gone from Panda. That shocked me.
Yeah.
I mean, it really, I lost his job. That shocked me, and I was like, oh, wow. But then, okay. Dixie Carter, place. Looking back on it, you got to go self.
That's how Dixie got inserted into TNA.
Read the notes.
Yeah. It's amazing.
How about that?
The next week, we've got Duggan. He's going to come back, and he's looking for a tag team partner to take on Glenn Gilberti and Mike Sanders. Who else but Moondog Spot in 2003. Also in 2003, D'Lo Brown is going to team up with Dusty Rhodes to beat up the sons of Flair, Watts, and Lawler. Raven and AJ are in the main event ladder match. Raven's going to get the win to earn the NWA title match, but there's a bigger issue after. Raven goes right to the Atlanta emergency room. Apparently, he had a cut from the week prior where he bladed himself too deep, and the cut wouldn't close. So he's bleeding excessively, even during indie appearances, because it just will not close, to the point he's going to need a plastic surgeon to cosmetically repair it. And the second cut gets opened up here on the ladder match on the 19th, but it happens the hard way when AJ hits Raven with the handle side of a trash can cover. This is not good when guys have to go to the ER to get some treatments for cuts. Did you ever have to get a cut cosmetically repaired or closed professionally?
Nope. Never. But that's just, I remember in general, it got really serious. When you're a week out and that thing ain't healed, dude, you've got serious issues.
We should also mention that the March 12th show is the highest drawing TNA pay-per-view to date. So while we can act like, man, they're throwing a lot of names in here, it's working. The numbers are up. DirecTV is encouraged. But on the 19th, talk about bad timing. President Bush is, going to have some Saddam Hussein news where he gave a time limit to Saddam to leave Iraq. It expires. That's all over the news. America's about to be at war. So we're probably less interested in what Raven and AJ are going to do with the latter.
I don't know how many Wednesdays, not consecutively, but during this Gulf War and not Gulf War, during the invasion, during this time frame, it seemed like it happened on Wednesdays. Different bit, not like small news bits, massive breaking news. It's going to be on every network television. I mean, it was big stuff. I know when they tore the statue down, either that happened that Wednesday morning or anyway, Wednesday afternoon. A lot of stuff happened on Wednesdays. We can look back in time 10 years ago. A lot of people, with a lot of unrest going on now and the stuff in Afghanistan last year, but this was some major political stuff going on.
Well, there's no politics involved when you sit down to do one of these sit-down interviews with Mike Tenay. You're going to dismiss all the challengers, including D'Lo and David Flair and Eric Watts and AJ Styles. And it's made clear that you're not going to be on the show tonight because you've got a charity appearance that would prevent you from being on the show. And when Tenay brings up Vince Russo, you get emotional. Fast forward to the actual show. Eric Watts is in the ring with the other sons, Brian Lawler and David Flair. And he's pointing out, man, I just want to be Jeff Jarrett's friend. The lights go out. When they come back on, you're there, surprise, and you crush him with a chair. And then you cut a promo on everybody, AJ, Raven, Gilberti, Killings. And then D'Lo comes out and asks for a shot. And somehow Gilberti is going to offer D'Lo a chance to join SEX in exchange for a title shot. And D'Lo accepts. What do you think of this lights on, lights off, the lights off, lights on reveal? That's been done a lot in wrestling. I think it was first probably popularized, at least in my lifetime, in ECW. Are you a fan of that idea or no?
It can be overdone. I know in WCW in the dying days, I felt like it just can be overdone. It is super effective when done, when it hadn't been done in a while, and the right reveal. Because darkness just creates the anticipation. The light's coming on. So and if you can let it be out more than a heart, not too long, it works magically.
Well, something else that worked magically is Dusty Rhodes versus David Flair. That's a real match that happened, folks. Dusty Rhodes versus the son of Ric Flair. They went 2 minutes and 25 seconds. Dusty gets the win after a cowbell shot. Afterwards, Lawler is going to attack Dusty and take back the NWA title belt that David had, quote unquote, stolen from his dad. And if you're wondering, yes, this was the actual 10 pounds of gold, the one that Hunter actually has on his wall now. Arguably the most famous belt in the history of wrestling, and it's here at the Nashville Fairgrounds. Who would have thought?
Conrad, how about that for them belt collectors out in the world?
Unbelievable stuff here. After the match, we got Ron Killings and the debuting Mabel coming in. Just lots of moving parts here, including Perry Saturn. Perry Saturn is going to debut alongside the New Church and Sandman to take on Triple X and the Harris Brothers. Lots of momentum here, and Jeremy Borash would actually point that out in his weekly column. He would jump online and write basically a commentary. He effectively, quote unquote, squashes the rumors that if TNA was to secure a broadcast deal, which they're close to, It's not going to do away with pay-per-view. Those shows will support the weekly pay-per-views. Of course, the newsletters say there's just no way that's the case. The Torch would say D'Lo Brown and Don Harris needed stitches after taking chair shots from Jeff Jarrett at the end of the pay-per-view, and that it appeared that D'Lo lowered his head at the last second, causing him to take the chair shot on the top of his head. And afterwards, he would say, "I'm just pissed that my white shirt got messed up," and everyone laughed. When you have an errant chair shot like this and there's blood,
not good.
What's protocol?
It depends on it. Said I got both of them. I mean, things it happens so many times. I don't know if I don't like to say I'm reckless. I'll lay it in. Reckless. I don't. Not saying I've never been reckless, but it happens. I don't know. To get both guys in one segment, that's awful.
Well, so was Bart Gunn. He shows up at this show. He's backstage hanging out with a bunch of the wrestlers, but apparently rubs a lot of them the wrong way with his quote-unquote arrogance. Apparently, he only said hello to a few of the guys, which others took as him being too good to talk to everyone. I know that's the old school way of thinking, but I also could see where, hey, maybe you want to stay out of the way and not interfere. These are guys at work. I don't want to be a bother. I could go either way on that. What say you?
Bart, I mean, the nicest guy in the world. I mean, and didn't want to be disrespectful would be my take. And look, he probably came in after the show had started. He doesn't want to interrupt the show flow. Bart's always been a pro.
Well, we have really enjoyed our time here today. We're going to wrap it up now. I'm pumped to talk to you next week. We're going to be talking about Global Force Wrestling, why the company was formed, the ups and downs, Toby Keith, Cody Rhodes, and so much more. In the coming weeks, we've also got Ring King Part 2, Lockdown 2008 with the old epic Samoa Joe Kurt Angle match, Spring Stampede 2000, the Road Dogg, Tennessee Lee in the spring of 98, plus other great topics like Slammiversary 07 and the Heartbreak Kid, Shawn Michaels. You get all of these shows early and ad-free over at adfreeshows.com. How about you can't get it any earlier than being a part of our live studio audience, and it starts at just $9 a month. And right now you can enjoy the first week completely free. That's right. A free trial right now today at adfreeshows.com. By the way, you'll enjoy 7 big pieces of bonus content. This past Friday to celebrate St. Patrick's Day, we had something for everybody over there, including a bonus episode with your pal Road Dogg winning the IC title, Eric Bischoff talking about main eventing Raw with Steve Austin, a new Ask Conrad where I got a little fired up about Tony Khan, and a whole lot more, including some great stuff we just posted from the book with David Crockett from March of 1985. He sort of helped finance WrestleMania, and he got TBS back, and you don't want to miss it. And don't miss your chance to advertise here with us on the program. It's advertisewithjarrett.com. If your business is targeting men that are 25 to 54 years old, you just can't beat advertising here on My World. You hear the same advertisers over and over and over. Why is that? Because it really works. And so do our show handles. Check us out on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at MyWorldPod. And be sure to check out all of our fun merch over at boxofgimmicks.com, including the now infamous Last Outlaw t-shirt. Man, I enjoy talking about the good old days of TNA, the good, the bad, and the ugly. This was fun today, man. Thanks for the time.
20 years, Conrad.
Where does it go?
Where does it go? And I can tell you this for sure. 20 years ago when I was Potato and D-Lo and that one of the Harris boys and Dusty was running in, I don't think had ever prophesized I'd be doing a jig in Winnipeg.
No.
On TBS.
When you won the international.
Bingo. There we go. Now we're talking.
Everybody knows it. Be sure to tune in tomorrow night, AEW live. Jeff Jarrett's going to strut that ass looking as only he can look with his own 10 pounds of gold. The AEW International Championship this Wednesday night. And we'll see you guys next week right here on My World.
Peace.
As an adult, don't we all miss spring break? Nothing like taking a week off from all your responsibilities. Well, here's the next best thing for adults, a spring break from house payments. SaveWithConrad.com can help you get rid of all your credit card debt, just like that. We're routinely helping our listeners save $5, $6, $7, even $800 a month. And you don't need perfect credit or money out of your pocket to do this, but check this out, no house payments for 2 months at SaveWithConrad.com.